Welcome back to my short series explaining various PC parts on a beginner level. If you haven't checked out the rest of the videos in this series, check out the top right corner to catch up on the ones I've made so far. In this video, we'll be discussing the power supply. We've covered the major components of a computer so far, and now we'll start to get into some of the less frequently discussed parts. A power supply unit, or PSU, is absolutely necessary for every build of a computer. It's how you connect your computer to the wall to supply all your parts with power. And more specifically, it converts alternating current received from the wall into direct current that goes into your components. If you're using a site like PC Part Picker that I've recommended in previous videos, you can use that to easily calculate how much power your system will draw, and then you can shop for power supplies according to that spec. Usually it's best to get a power supply that can support a certain threshold beyond what your system requires, so that you know your power supply will be able to handle your system's draw at max load. This will allow you to also upgrade parts in the future that will require more power probably, and you won't have to change out your power supply along with it. However, if you exceed your system's draw by too much, you'll risk compromising efficiency with your power supply. I think exceeding 100 watts excess power would be a bit overkill. There are plenty of cheap power supplies out there, and while it might be tempting to try to save a buck by getting one, I would think twice about doing so. The power supply is probably the most likely of all your components to represent a fire hazard, and a legitimate fire hazard should anything ever go wrong with it. It also connects to nearly every component in your computer, so if something goes wrong with it, there's a risk of damaging or even bricking a component. Additionally, these off-brand power supplies will probably not be certified for certain efficiency levels, meaning that their power delivery will not be as efficient. There is a spectrum of certifications called 80+ that can demonstrate a power supply's ability to deliver power efficiently through the transformation process that electricity goes through in the PSU. The spectrum of certifications goes from plain old 80+ to 80+ bronze, silver, gold, platinum, and all the way up to titanium, with efficiency increasing as you go higher. These certifications indicate the power conversion is rated at, you might have guessed, 80% or higher. When a power supply is less efficient, the lost power, lost electricity, is converted into heat. This could potentially make them more dangerous and at least more of a hazard when cooling your PC, since your PSU is in your case and that heat will affect your other components. Although the other higher rated power supplies will be more expensive, they usually are higher quality, more efficient, and will sometimes come with additional features. For instance, cheap power supplies usually have cables that are completely non-modular. This means that the cables are permanently attached, and if they aren't in use, they'll have to be tucked somewhere in the case around your power supply. I usually opt for a fully modular power supply, which is a bit more expensive since it looks much cleaner and I won't have to fit the spare cables in my case somewhere. In a fully modular power supply, these cables can be fully removed or added according to your part requirements. While they're usually a bit more expensive, I find the cleaner look to be much more visually appealing, especially if your PSU isn't covered by a shroud built into your case. For any build, I would try to get something that is 80+ rated. That should basically be a given. What grade of 80+ you'll choose will depend on your budget mostly. I would choose a capacity that exceeds your required power by somewhat of a decent margin. I think 100 watts is pretty safe. Reputable brands of PSUs include Seasonic, EVGA, Corsair, Rosewell, or Gigabyte. Basically any major manufacturers of other parts will probably have a decent power supply. To connect your power supply to the various parts of your computer, you'll find various ports like this on your motherboard and GPU. These are called pin connectors. Some will be 8-pin. Usually your motherboard is 24-pin. Sometimes you'll see 6-pin as well. The ports will usually be labeled on the power supply, and sometimes on the cables they'll be labeled on the ends as well. If you're working with an older computer, you might see these kinds of ports. These are called Molex and are usually for connecting things that require less power, like CPU fans or storage drives. If you're building a computer from current parts, you probably won't ever see these, but they're useful to know about. Sometimes you might use them to connect to storage drives since they don't require a ton of power. Usually there's like an extension on your power supply that you'll use for that. Thanks so much for watching all the way to the end of this video. We've only got 3 more videos to cover: the case, storage, and peripherals. If you'd like to learn more about any other computer parts, check out the playlist in the description. Leave a comment to let me know what you thought about this video, and subscribe if you'd like to see more content like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.